Most serial killers are created during their youth, often due to loneliness, abusive parents, mental health issues, and a lack of love and support. Many of the killers documented throughout history are products of society itself. So, let's explore the 10 warning signs that serial killers exhibit in their early years.
Horror history.
In 1963, psychiatrist J.M. MacDonald introduced the MacDonald Triad, linking specific behaviors in early childhood to potential future violence, particularly among serial murderers. Among these behaviors, enuresis, or bedwetting, stood out. While bedwetting is common in childhood, it becomes concerning if it persists beyond age 5, occurring at least twice a week for 3 consecutive months. Children experiencing this may feel humiliation or frustration, often facing ridicule from parents. Notably, notorious serial killers Albert Fish and Donald Pee Wee Gaskins Jr. both struggled with persistent bedwetting during their formative years. Fish, infamous for 3 child murders in the early 1900s, wet the bed until age 11. Similarly, Gaskins, who claimed responsibility for over 100 killings, though convicted of 9, also grappled with bedwetting throughout his childhood. MacDonald's theory proposed that arson, or fire setting, could indicate violent tendencies in the future. Serial killer Otis Toole, convicted of 6 murders, displayed this trait from a young age and found arousal in flames. Toole admitted to deriving excitement from larger fires, suggesting a troubling fascination. Raised in a troubled environment with a Satanist grandmother introducing him to dark rituals, including self-mutilation, Toole's early experiences likely influenced his behavior. Setting fires may have provided him with feelings of power, excitement, and revenge, offering an outlet for his emotions during a challenging childhood. The third behavior in the MacDonald Triad involves harming small animals, which may start innocently but can escalate to something much darker. Mistreatment of animals, particularly repeated acts of violence without remorse, is often seen in troubled children who later become serious offenders in adulthood. 60% of children who have suffered abuse themselves have been found to mistreat animals later in life. Serial killer Edmund Kemper, known for his gruesome crimes including the murder of family members and young women, displayed this behavior from a young age. At just 10 years old, he buried his cat alive and later displayed its head as a trophy. By age 13, he had escalated to using a machete to decapitate another cat. As writer Harold Schechter astutely observed, animal torture isn't a stage, it's a rehearsal. A study revealed that many infamous serial killers experienced head injuries during childhood, which could have played a role in their later lack of empathy. According to Elaine Whitfield Sharp, a defense attorney and expert in head trauma cases, both psychiatric and traumatic damage to the frontal lobe can result in a significant lack of empathy. For example, Richard Ramirez, known as the Night Stalker, endured a dresser falling on his head at the age of 5, requiring 30 stitches. Similarly, John Wayne Gacy Jr., infamous as the Killer Clown, suffered blackouts after being struck by a swing at age 11. David Berkowitz, also known as the Son of Sam, sustained a 10-centimeter gash on his head from being hit with a pipe at the age of 8. Albert Fish, notoriously dubbed the Boogeyman, suffered severe head trauma from a fall at age 7. Even Dennis Rader, the BTK killer, attributed his lack of empathy to an accidental head injury inflicted by his mother during infancy. In adolescence, extreme antisocial behavior often emerges as one of the earliest signs of psychopathy. According to the Institute of Psychiatry, approximately 5% of children exhibit severe antisocial behavior, which can escalate into psychopathy later in life. Genetics contribute to about 30% of cases, while the remainder stem from challenging or traumatic upbringings. A chilling example of this behavior manifested in the early years of notorious serial killer Ted Bundy. At the tender age of 3, Bundy displayed a disturbing fascination with knives. His aunt recounted a harrowing incident where Bundy, in a chilling display of premeditation, placed 3 butcher knives beside her as she slept. Similarly, the case of Carol Cole, another infamous serial killer, offers a glimpse into the ominous trajectory of psychopathy. Cole's descent into darkness began when he committed his first murder at a shockingly young age. Drowning a school friend in a lake, what was initially perceived as an accident soon unraveled into a calculated act of violence upon Cole's chilling confession. The impact of violence during childhood is huge, shaping how kids see the world. Those who go through such trauma might not be as bothered by violence and might think it's okay to use it to solve problems. Dr. Adrian Raine, a crime expert, talks about how both genes and surroundings influence violent behavior. In his book The Anatomy of Violence, he explains how our genes and where we grow up can make us more likely to act violently. Take the story of Richard Ramirez, for example. When he was young, his cousin Miguel, who had been in a war, told him about terrible things he'd seen. Miguel even showed Richard pictures of the awful stuff that happened. When Richard was 13, he saw Miguel kill his wife. This was a terrible thing for him to witness. Sadly, this experience may have set Richard on a path to becoming a violent criminal himself. He later went on to commit many awful crimes, scaring people across California. That's why he got the nickname the Night Stalker. Some kids are naturally more solitary than others, and that's okay. Being a loner doesn't mean a child will grow up to be a serial killer. But sometimes, a child's behavior can change dramatically, like what happened with Jeffrey Dahmer. He used to be really social, but when his family moved, things took a dark turn. There are stories that he was abused, and after that, he started focusing on weird things like dissecting dead animals instead of making friends. Now, if that antisocial behavior sticks around and gets worse, it could be a sign of something more serious like antisocial personality disorder. People with this condition have a hard time feeling bad about hurting others and might even enjoy it. We're not sure exactly what causes it, but it could be a mix of genes and bad stuff happening when they were kids. Ed Gein, who inspired some famous movie villains, had a rough childhood too. He didn't have many friends because his mom was really strict and would punish him for trying to make any. When she died, things got even weirder. He started doing some really creepy stuff, like digging up graves and making clothes out of dead women's skin. It's a sad story, but it shows how important it is to look out for kids who might be going through tough times. Many infamous serial killers had something in common when they were kids. They were curious about sex and did things they shouldn't have. Some would spy on people getting undressed, while others would do even creepier stuff like peeking through windows. Eric Hickey, who knows a lot about serial killers, says that some of them blamed adult movies for their crimes. They'd start by watching it, then get addicted and want to see more and more violent stuff. Eventually, they'd get used to it and start acting out what they saw. Even Ted Bundy, one of the most notorious serial killers, admitted that he used to peek at his neighbors. And he said that adult movies played a big part in making him violent. He said, "Adult movies can get into any house and mess up kids' heads. It messed up mine." It's a scary reminder of how easily kids can get mixed up in dangerous stuff if they're not careful. When parents find themselves in a constant battle of wills with their children, it's like they're stuck in a game of tug-of-war. The more the parents try to control their child, the more the child fights back. Kids who are behaving badly might resort to lying, breaking things, playing emotional games, or throwing violent tantrums to get their way. Psychologist Robert D. Hare, who knows a lot about bad behavior, says that being sneaky and tricky is a sign that someone might grow up to be a psychopath. In another study, scientists looked at kids who acted mean and sneaky, but weren't yet full-on psychopaths. They asked parents questions about whether their kid felt bad when they did something wrong, if punishments worked, if they were selfish, if they lied, or if they tried to get away with stuff. They found that little kids who scored high on these sneaky and selfish behaviors were more likely to have big problems later on. It's a scary thought that what happens in childhood can stick with us for a long time. When someone tells a kid that he's always off in his own world, it's usually just a teasing joke. But what people might not notice is just how deep that kid is diving into his make-believe world. Imagining stuff can be a way for a kid to deal with scary or sad feelings. But sometimes, kids who've been through tough stuff, like abuse or neglect, can get stuck in their imaginary worlds. It's like they're watching the same movie over and over again, finding comfort in a story they can control, kind of like how a serial killer keeps going back for more victims. Edmund Kemper, a scary serial killer, once said, "I knew way before I started killing that it was going to happen. The thoughts were just too strong. They went on for too long and got way too detailed." Other killers like Jeffrey Dahmer and David Berkowitz have said they spent a lot of time daydreaming about doing bad stuff when they were kids. It's creepy to think that some people have been planning their first murder since they were just kids themselves. And guys, have you done any of the things that I mentioned above? If yes, then comment it down below. Let's see what mischief you got up to in your childhood. And before going, if you learned anything new, then please hit that like button, and if you are new to the channel, then please hit the subscribe button. See you in the next one.